Hi, everybody. Today's Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026, and our dear friend Scott Ritter is here with us. Welcome back, Scott.
Thanks for having me.
Scott, let me start with the breaking news. Just 20 minutes ago, we've learned that Yemen and Sarla in Yemen announced that they targeted two Saudi oil tankers and with ballistic missile and drones. And so far, they have turned, they forced 10 Saudi oil tankers back to, you know, to their to the origin, to the way that, it was from Saudi Arabia out or from outside to Saudi Arabia. They're putting a blockade on Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia has right now, after 12 years of the siege on Yemen, they're feeling the pain right now. And how do you see the way that they're going to respond to this sort of escalation?
What can Saudi Arabia do? Invade Yemen? Oh, they did that, and they're not winning. Bomb? Well, they've done that, and there's not a damn thing the Saudis can do. I mean, the bottom line is the Saudis need to be careful about, Yemeni escalation, because in addition to the blockade, which they've now imposed on Saudi Arabia, and people need to understand the blockade, what the importance of this blockade is that when the Iranians asserted control over the Strait of Hormuz, the Saudis rerouted 70% of their oil production to Yanbu, the port of Yanbu, and it sails through the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, which are now closed. So basically, Saudi Arabia is exporting zero oil, zero. And there's nothing they can do about it, literally nothing they can do about it, because the Yemeni missiles will sink the Saudi oil tankers. What they can do is sue for peace, but we also have to remember what prompted this. This isn't the Houthi waking up and saying, well, we're going to play a geopolitical card today, out of nowhere. The Saudis imposed an aerial blockade on Houthi-controlled Yemen. They shelled, or they bombed an airbase, Sanaa airfield, after an Iranian airliner took off and landed there with a Houthi delegation that was attending the funeral of Ali Khamenei. Saudi Arabia is 100% in the wrong. What's even more amazing is that President Donald Trump encouraged the Saudis to bomb Yemen. Any rational actor would know that would have triggered a Yemeni response, which would have probably included the closure of the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, which they've done. So why did Donald Trump, allow Saudi Arabia to, enter such an obvious trap, especially when there's no solution to this? I mean, it raises questions about the viability of the U.S.-Saudi relationship. To be honest, that the United States might have a hidden agenda here, but the bottom line is that the Saudis are screwed. And this will be the end of Saudi Arabia if they don't reverse this, because without money, without oil, Saudi Arabia has no money, no economy. And right now, Saudi Arabia has no cards to play, none.
When you talk about the agenda in Washington, if I put myself in the shoes of Donald Trump and his administration, I would say, with the difficulties we are facing in the Strait of Hormuz and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, why would I have to support a strike on Yemeni airport? Because it was reported by Axios that Donald Trump supported Saudi attack on Yemen. Why would you want to do that if you're facing many difficulties in the Strait of Hormuz?
I don't know. I mean, rationally, there's no reason for this. So we have to start thinking irrationally, and this is purely a product of supposition. There's no hard fact to back this up. But when you take a look at what's driving Donald Trump's actions, it's largely oil. We know that the first 39 days of conflict were halted because Donald Trump said we literally were running out of oil. We had to stop. We had to implement the MOU. J.D. Vance has openly acknowledged that the MOU was just a charade, basically a lie to buy time so that the West could replenish their oil stockpiles. So we know energy is the key. We also have to take a look at the totality of the American effort, and there is some reason to believe that the Trump administration was seeking to use the conflict with Iran in an effort to gain control over a major source of energy to China. We'd already done so through the capture of Maduro in Venezuela, and we were seeking to replicate this level of control in Iran. And the goal there is to basically get the Chinese to be dependent upon oil supplies that America has the on-off toggle switch. And so you look at this and you say, well, maybe Donald Trump wants to further solidify American dominance of the global energy market by removing a competitor, removing Saudi Arabia from the fold. Again, this is highly speculative and I hope wrong, but I'm just trying to find a rational reason for this. I think that Donald Trump holds grudges. I think he remembers when the Saudis took umbrage at him claiming America was the dominant power, and they said Saudi Arabia will be the dominant power, going forward because of their energy dominance. So I'm speculating that Donald Trump could have been setting Saudi Arabia up to fail, to make Saudi Arabia more dependent upon the United States for security needs, and to create opportunities in the global market for American energy.
Then, what do you make of the recent comments about? Because many people are talking about how to deal with the Pickaxe Mountain in Iran, because it seems that they're deciding about if they're going to hit it and what would be that attack. Are they going to use, again, B-2 bombers to hit that mountain? How effective that could be? Even they're talking about maybe nuclear weapons they're going to use. What is your understanding of that sort of attack if they decide to do it?
This is a dangerous situation because the way that the Trump administration is framing the Pickaxe target is in the form of a potential existential threat to the United States and the global community from an Iranian nuclear weapon that could be built in a reconstituted enrichment hall, reconstituted nuclear warhead design center, et cetera. If Trump is able to articulate convincingly that Iran poses a existential threat to the United States and its allies through the potential of possessing a nuclear weapon, and that it was derived from a nuclear program that the United States claims is weaponized, then I am fearful that we've just, from a doctrine standpoint, literally created a definition that's backed up by the nuclear posture review and the commander's guidance to the nuclear posture review, nuclear implementation plan, that permits the United States to use nuclear weapons. There's rumors that Donald Trump has, once, maybe twice, approached the Pentagon for permission to use, or not permission, but for them to draw up a nuclear strike option against Iran. And both times the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has rejected this, saying that it's fundamentally unconstitutional, these orders. But here we could see an effort to, use intelligence information to manufacture a threat that was adaptable to U.S. doctrine, and I am concerned about that. I'm not going to be dismissive of it. Nima, that I've said all along that the United States, if Iran, put their stuff in places that couldn't be destroyed, that the United States, would consider the use of nuclear weapons. Well, we know that Donald Trump has already considered the use of nuclear weapons. Now we see the potential for a scenario where he would, authorize the use of nuclear weapons and the military would concur. That's the danger of Pickaxe Mountain, because there's no conventional weaponry that can take it out. And if Donald Trump's creating a scenario of that has Iran developing a nuclear weapon, then the logical direction for U.S. policy is to destroy that weapon using whatever means possible, to include nuclear weapons, because this is doctrinally what our nuclear arsenal is all about. People took umbrage at this. They didn't like me saying this, but here we are. This is the exact scenario we face. I'm not saying that Trump's going to use nuclear weapons. I'm saying that the fact that you and I are having this conversation, underscores the danger of the moment. That there is the potential, there's a pathway to a cognizable justification for the use of nuclear weapons against Iran because of the durability of Pickaxe to conventional interdiction. And if we determine that Iran is putting in a viable centrifuge capability, that Iran has installed a nuclear warhead assembly plant or pilot plant, that Iran could be days away from having a deliverable nuclear weapon, we may use a nuclear weapon ourselves.
How is that going to change the concept of using nuclear weapons or building nuclear weapons? How is that going to?
Well, this fundamentally alters everything. This is why it's so dangerous. I've used the argument I'm about to articulate. I haven't used it against the Americans. I've used it against the Russians. For those Russians who embrace Sergei Karaganov's, doctrine of preemptive strike to include nuclear weapons. Remember, in June of 2023, Karaganov published an article in which he, postulated the possibility of, attacking Poznan with a nuclear weapon, Poland, and that the United States would do nothing because it's not willing to trade Boston for Poznan. So that doctrine, he modified it in the days leading up to Victory Day celebration this year, where he said that he's not advocating a preemptive nuclear strike. He's advocating the use of Oreshnik, conventional weapons. And then if that doesn't work, if that doesn't break the back of the Europeans, et cetera, then and only then would nuclear weapons be considered. But he's talking about breaking the taboo on the use of nuclear weapons, using nuclear weapons in a non-nuclear environment. This would be the end of arms control, because the very premise of modern day arms control is the notion that nuclear wars can't be won, therefore they should never be fought. Therefore, weapons should never be used. Why did we come up with mutually assured destruction by banning the ABM treaty back in 1972? It's so that we level the playing field, so that all parties understand that if you start a nuclear war, there's nothing to defend against what the enemy is going to come at you, and we're all going to die. Therefore, let's not start a nuclear war. That if the United States were to use nuclear weapons against Iran, what do the Russians do? Because right now the Russians are embracing a nuclear doctrine premised on that basic fundamental concept. Nuclear wars can't be won, therefore they should never be fought. And yet, if the United States uses nuclear weapons, the Russian doctrine is immediately outdated, because the United States has now embraced a doctrine that says nuclear wars can be won, and we will use nuclear weapons preemptively. That's the new norm. So Russia will have to respond accordingly. At some point in time, Russia will have to show a willingness to, parallel the American policy. That's how you achieve strategic balance. And they would have to use a nuclear weapon against, a threat city. And who knows what they'd nuke? Maybe they'd nuke Poland. Maybe they'd nuke a Baltic state. But they have to nuke somebody so that they tell the Americans, we too have nuclear weapons, and we too will use them preemptively as a message to the Americans: don't mess with Russia. But every war game in the Pentagon that begins with a limited nuclear strike along the lines of what I've just discussed always ends with a general nuclear exchange that terminates all life on the planet. So this is the problem. With any use of nuclear weapons by night, the genie is out of the bottle now, and it will never go. It's like putting toothpaste back in the tube. You're just not going to do it.
Yeah. Just Scott, with what's going on as we talk, there are explosions happening in Kuwait. Kuwait is becoming the front line right now for for Iran, and the way that Iran is hitting at Kuwait is more than all the missiles and drones that they're sending to other countries in the GCC countries or outside GCC countries, naming Jordan. And why is Kuwait is that important for Iran to hit it so hard and this way?
Uh, I don't know if it's important. I mean, the United Arab Emirates seems to be a more important target if you were going to be seeking to. I think it's because Kuwait is the least important of major targets, and that it is vulnerable to the kind of strikes that Iran is putting in right now. These strikes are designed to take out desalination plants and energy production. Desalination plants taken out mean you have no fresh water. Take out energy production. I'm talking about, energy power plants. You have no electricity for air conditioning, and life becomes unlivable. And so I think what uh, the Iranians are doing is setting the example, saying that there is a price to pay for continued bombardment of Iran, and Kuwait is providing a base for the launch of ATACMS missiles, by by the U.S. forces, and so Kuwait is clearly an enemy state. Iran is, I believe, setting Kuwait up for the total destruction of its major civilian infrastructure. That means there will be no ability to generate water from desalination. There will be no ability to generate energy from power plants, and then Kuwait dies as a state. Again, you and I have talked about this. I said that one of the things Iran has threatened to do prior to this conflict breaking out is to kill nation states. I think Iran is in the process of destroying Kuwait as a nation state. Um, maybe Bahrain will be targeted next. Who knows? I'm not doing Iranian targeting for them, but the point is, um, I think Iran is looking to weaken Kuwait and set the precedent so that when they say next is the United Arab Emirates, that the sheiks there sit up and go, whoa, 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 no, 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 we don't want any of this. What do we need to do to prevent our country from being destroyed? Because the reality is that there is no nation in the Persian Gulf that can defend itself against Iran. None. There's no air defense systems, nothing. So if Iran wanted to destroy them, Iran could destroy them. And the message that needs to be sent back to to the UAE and to Kuwait and to other Gulf Arab states is that you know we will destroy your nation. We will terminate you as a viable modern nation. And I think that's what is behind the Kuwaiti targeting. I don't think they've actually brought in nation killing strikes yet, but I do believe that they're setting Kuwait up for a terminal event. Um, and when it happens, it's going to be tragic for millions of people. But I think that's what's going on with the Russian bombardment of Kuwait.
The United States is withdrew from two bases in Saudi Arabia and in Jordan because of the recent attacks in Jordan. One of them, as you know, there were 4 casualties so far been announced, and many people were injured, and they were sent to Germany. And how do you see the situation, Scott, considering Jordan and the way that Iran is getting? It seems they're receiving intelligence from Jordanians, and it was confirmed. IRGC claimed that. Then Donald Trump confirmed that in his speech. He said that they were, sending intelligence to Iranians. That's why they know about our position in Jordan. And what is your understanding of what next step on the part of Washington? If Jordan is not safe, where are they going to go? Is that going to be in Israel? Is that going to be in Greece, or maybe Bulgaria, or I don't know, Diego Garcia? What else can they do, in your opinion?
What else can who do?
The United States, because they have to use these fighter jets, these refueling tankers, these troops. They're not safe. Yesterday we had an attack in, you know,
No, I know where
in
the attacks are.
Bahrain.
Yeah. I mean, what the United States will fall back on bases that will make them less susceptible to destruction. At some point in time, um, it's going to become very complicated to launch strike packages against Iran because, we have to deal with um, flight time, fuel. So you're gonna have to have planes take off, get refueled, fly, probably get refueled again, bomb, come back, refueled. So you could be looking, up to 4 or 5 refueling events, depending on how far back you put the aircraft. But our Air Force is designed to do just that. So the idea that we'll stop attacking Iran because we've moved these bases, no, will continue. But it doesn't matter because we're going to run out of ammunition soon. The fact of the matter is, the United States has a very finite amount of air delivered munitions available, and we're about to run out of them. And when we do, it's going to be catastrophic for the United States.
Yeah. Do you believe that the next step would be somehow Israel? And Israel doesn't seem to be willing to join the fight. Yesterday, Smotrich said that we're feeling just fine here. We don't want to join the fight. This is a tit for tat, and the United States is fighting the war, and we don't need to get involved. If they put these fighter jets and refueling tankers in Israel, is the war going to get to Israel finally?
It could. I mean, in theory, Iran could decide not to grant safe status to the Iranians and or safe status to the United States and Israel and begin attacking these targets. And this would escalate to Israel launching strikes back. But again, Israel in the original 39-day conflict was one of the parties suing for peace. Enough was enough. And this is the reality. There's nothing that's changed in the Israeli military posture that implies that they might be able to get a different outcome from simply repeating bombing of the past. Israel gave it their best shot. They put their best set of targets out there and they dropped bombs on them. It didn't achieve anything. What the Iranians were doing in the end was blowing up office buildings that were not known to the naked eye, but to the insiders, they knew it was a place where Israeli intelligence was operating, a place where special systems were being developed or deployed or owned. And they move on to the next one. I just got to tell you, it's
Yeah.
late here, so every once my brain
Yeah.
wanders,
Yeah.
and I lost track of my answer there.
Scott, there are two concepts of this war for Iranians. There are people arguing Iran doesn't need to attack GCC countries, they have to attack Israel. And the other is the Iranian strategy that they're mostly focused on the Strait of Hormuz and attacking American positions, American weapons in the region. Which one do you think? How do you understand it? And which one would be more effective?
The one that wins the wars, which is attack American bases and attack Gulf Arab states. And focus. The people that want to strike Israel are Israeli haters. I'm not here to defend Israel. I'm not here to try and say, oh, Israel's good, bad, and the other. What I'm here to say is that from the Iranian perspective, their strategic goal is to drive the United States out of the Gulf. And you achieve that by defeating the United States. Your major effort to squeeze the world isn't bombing Israel, but to prevent oil energy from departing area, and if necessary, in retaliation, to destroy or damage oil production facilities in the Gulf Coast region et cetera. This is what Iran's doing. All the people that are saying, no, you got to attack Israel, they're the same people saying that Russia has to attack Europe. Why? I mean, Iran is winning right now. There's really no debate here. About the United States will not be able to compel Iran to alter its course on anything. Iran, on the other hand, as you indicated, has already compelled the United States to begin withdrawing out of bases that are, within immediate strike distance of the Iranians, pulling further back, and the world's running out of oil. The same conditions that caused Donald Trump to beg for an MOU on April 8th are about to be replicated. So yeah, I think the Iranian government knows what it's doing. The people calling for the strike of Israel, they just don't like Israel, and they're encouraging Iran to do something that will yield the strategic advantage that they've earned.
There were people arguing, Scott, in the United States, mostly appearing on Fox News. I'm mentioning this because this is the only outlet in the United States that Donald Trump watches. It seems that it's all about invasion. It's all about doing something in the Strait of Hormuz. They're talking about the Qeshm Island. They're talking about the Khark Island, something doing at the border with the Iraqi Kurdistan. And we know that in the recent days, Iran was attacking, the Iraqi Kurdistan and attacking Al Harir base, the U.S. base in Iraqi Kurdistan. And what do you make of these people arguing at this stage, arguing that there's still the chance is high if we do that, we can liberate the Strait of Hormuz without having any sort of difficulties. We don't need to go to Tehran. We need to isolate the southern part and open up the Strait of Hormuz.
I think we, have to understand. I mean, who's articulating for this? We know there's people on Fox News. We know, but we've seen General Wesley Clark allude to this. We've seen Pete Pace allude to this, former general. We see non-military professionals talking about, we can do this. We can land troops ashore. We can seize this territory. But the fact of the matter is we can't. I mean, I just want somebody to explain how we're going to logistically support any landing force, because they go in with the basic load, whatever they can carry on their back or, on the landing craft. But then they're going to be vulnerable to resupply. We have to be able to get supplies to them. That means we either set up a harbor where we can bring in the trucks with the ammo and stuff, or we ship in the trucks on their own. Who knows? But the point is, logistics will define this. Marines, of course, have a proclivity for giving their lives in support of very dangerous assaults. That's why we built the Iwo Jima Memorial. But in the 1980s, the Marine Corps shifted their tactical focus away from the legacy operations of World War II, Vietnam, Korea, to a new way of war, maneuver warfare, which seeks to avoid these death traps. There's no one, I don't believe there's anybody right now that in the Marine Corps that can articulate a viable plan. I mean, of course, if ordered to do something, it's an unlawful order, they'll do it. But the Marines have institutional memory, and we know what happened at Koh Tang Island in May of 1975 when when sailors from the Mayaguez, an American flagged container ship, were taken off their ship by the Khmer Rouge. We thought they put them on Koh Tang Island. We sent a Marine battalion landing team, similar size to what we're talking about here with these Marine expeditionary units. And I think it was 11 helicopters in the initial wave. 8 of the 11 either were shot down or suffered so much damage they had to flee with no ability to come back in the fight. The Marines were isolated on the bridgeheads. Marines were swimming for their lives in the water because their helicopter was shot down in the water. The Marines had to consolidate their holding, eventually get rid of one of the beachheads. The final beachhead collapsed in the middle of the night. and they left 3 Marines behind, an M60 machine gun. You got to understand, the Marine Corps, we don't leave people behind. So this tells you how rushed and hurried this retreat from Koh Tang Island was. Guys, if we go into Karg Island, it's going to be worse than that. It's going to be more bloody. We're not going to win because it's a stupid assignment. The Iranians will have 80 kilometers of operational depth. If we go into Karg Island, that means we'll go in, whatever land we take, we have to hold, and the Iranians now will be able to strike us. And we have shown no ability whatsoever to meaningfully interdict Iran's ballistic missile force. So I think what we're looking at is, from a tactical standpoint, advantage Iran.
Yeah. Do you, Scott, see that the conflict with the two? Today we've learned that the price of oil is $95 plus a barrel, which is an outcome of the two straits, the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb. And how long does it take for Donald Trump? The last time he announced the ceasefire, I assume that it was all about the oil market. It's about the economic pressure on Donald Trump. How do you see the situation right now? And are we getting to that point? Is he announcing somehow, I'm going to announce a new ceasefire, which I don't see Iranians going to accept that, by the way, because there is no talks, there is nothing happening in Iran excepting if Donald Trump tries to announce a ceasefire.
I think we're headed towards Donald Trump having to take some sort of unilateral action because of the detrimental consequences of his decision to re-engage militarily with Iran. I think the Iranians will accept it, I believe. I'm publishing a paper called Hybrid Diplomacy, and basically, Iran benefited from this. Remember, they negotiated an MOU that the Iranians said the Americans will never live up to. So if they knew that going in, why'd they negotiate it? Because it created the conditions not just for Donald Trump to buy oil and replenish stocks, but for the Iranians to sell oil, a whole bunch of oil. And I think that if Donald Trump were to resurrect the MOU at some date going forward, that the Iranians would, of course, say, we don't fully trust you, lay down additional conditions if they wanted to. But at the end of the day, they're going to, plug in their laptop and their telephone and get on with life, because that's what they have to do. This is what hybrid diplomacy is. It's basically using deceit to further your goals and objectives. And Iran's goals and objectives go beyond trying to defeat the United States. We're talking about national survival and the ability of Iran to mature into being a viable member of the BRICS Forum, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, et cetera. In order to do that, Iran needs stability. And stability comes in moments where there is no active conflict. So I do believe that Iran will if Donald Trump reintroduces an MOU, I think that Iran will accept it, maybe with a heavy caveat, but Iran has to demonstrate to the world that it's not the problem here, that it's not the one blocking peace. It's the United States through its irresponsible policies, through its current release of imagery and stuff. So yeah, I think both sides have an interest in embracing an MOU, and I believe that this is just going to be part of a cycle of on and off violence that'll go on for some time now, because neither side can afford to draw a hard line and say no, we're going to continue. We're not going to, Iran's not dying, but Iran is suffering harm from these strikes, and so I think that we could see a situation where Iran accepted the ceasefire proposed by Trump, knowing full well that it's just a sham, a charade. You can't believe anything, and we'll operate accordingly.
Iranians are talking about that since the MOU is not working, is not there anymore, and if something happens between Iran and the United States, negotiating or talk or some sort of that messaging each other, it's going to be about all fronts. It's going to be about Yemen, because Yemen is just coming out against Saudi Arabia. They don't want to be under siege anymore. Yemen going to be part of it. Lebanon going to be part of it. They're going to talk about negotiate on Palestine as well. And it's going to be, if that sort of negotiations happen, it's going to be the negotiations of the century, in my opinion, if the things getting in that direction.
I mean, that's the direction we're heading in. But I do believe that the Iranians will, because we're talking about time. We're talking about an energy security emergency that's taking place. So, I think Iran is going to be getting pressure from Russia and China, who are going to feel the effects of, economic collapse globally. Russia needs to produce oil, get it to market. China needs to buy oil and keep their economy running. So I do believe that they will put pressure on Iran to accept a interim continuation of the MOU, even though everybody knows that in the end the United States will just resume action. It's in their goal to manage the chaos. That's what hybrid diplomacy is all about, managing chaos. And so I do think that Iran will be pressured into accepting, an interim ceasefire deal that has as its foundational beliefs again, I apologize. I'm just so tired right now. I lost the concluding thought there. Just slipped my mind.
I totally understand. Thank you so much, Scott, for being with us today and for you tonight. Great pleasure as always. And go and I know that it's too late right now where you are.
Yeah. Well, it's also the heat. It just saps the strength out of you, and it's. I apologize. I mean, I want to be focused and be able to answer everything perfectly, but I start answering and then my brain just wanders. So sorry.
No problem at all. Thank you so much. And
Okay,
here is let me bring it. Here is the Scott Ritter's Substack. You can go there and follow Scott Ritter on his Substack.